Oh, well, that's good. For anyone watching this back, this is going to be one of our new series where we have a casual discussion with the Helios team here. At the moment, it's called Breakfast and Blockchain, but that may change to something different depending on when we have it, a chat during the day. So we've got myself, Waxer, and
I'm Chris Barnes.
That's Chris Barnes.
Hi.
There's another Gabriel Shaw. Gabriel Shaw. Yeah, there we go.
Excellent. This is working. I've confirmed on YouTube. This is in fact streaming live.
Well, that's good.
So that's good. Good to know.
So we've got a few general topics to discuss and have a chat about. So first one I was thinking is fractally.
Yeah.
So
have you read the white paper?
Yeah, well, I've most of it.
Gav, have you looked at it?
Not so much, no. And that's kind of one of the topics for me for this conversation is I'm not a developer, and I say that quite often in meetings. Even though I've been working in the crypto blockchain space since 2017 professionally, I still feel like I'm a newbie with understanding how these mechanisms actually works, and that's like just reflecting on myself. It kind of seems strange. I've watched videos. I've spent time at hackathons of a few different blockchain platforms, but I'm still not. I still don't feel confident that I can understand when developers are describing how their platforms work. I'm not sure that I get it, and that's that's to me, even subjectively, that's an interesting situation. So fractally, I don't know I have not read or looked into the white papers or green papers or whatever they're publishing yet. And at some point I absolutely will. But I don't know fundamentally how I would understand it being different from what they're doing now to what they're doing, because there's so many promises in the space. There's so many blockchains that are promising various transactions per second and this one and that one, and I just think I need to stick with what I know, which is business, projects, marketing, that kind of stuff, and that the development stuff gets absorbed partially, but I'm not confident.
Yeah, well, it looks interesting so far. It's quite an in-depth paper. There's a lot to it, but if it's implemented properly with EOS, then it could change the way EOS works completely.
So since you've read it, or more so Waxa, how do you find, does it make sense? Like, is it, because I've heard a couple bits, like on the chief delegate call yesterday, Jesse from the EOSB said he had read it. There was one spot that he read a couple times and still didn't quite get it.
Yeah.
I don't know. So how did you find
Well, I've read 3/4 of it, and I feel like I need to reread it to be able to give, a presentation on it. But so far, it's in depth. It covers multiple angles, multiple directions throughout, because it's quite a broad concept, having turning EOS into this fractal DAO. But it seems interesting. I think fractally itself's got a really nice brand image. I think that's pretty clear. They've done well with that.
Mm-hmm.
But another read through, and then I think the community were having quite a lot of questions, and then Dan was explaining how some of those questions were answered in his interview with BioWire News.
Yeah, apparently I've watched part of it, but I haven't seen all of it yet. So I've watched the first part of it. But that's what I've heard too, is that he should have released. I've heard a few people, more than one person, say that he should have come out with that BioWire interview first, almost, instead of the way it came out, and it just left so many people with so many questions that a lot of people just had this set of negative initial reaction, and it's just so sensitive. EOS has got so much baggage, right? It's the idea of scammers and 4 billion disappearing. Like, there's just so many people who have all this negative energy still. I don't know how that goes away. Like, I just don't know. It's hard.
It is hard.
Yes. So my view again, just always coming from the business side, even in my experience in larger companies, enterprise, there's always this distinction between the business side and the IT side, right, of the business. And I've always been on the business side, and we have to interface with the IT side, and we're presenting business case or business requirements basically. And then the infrastructure, the IT side is saying what's actually technically possible, how long it's going to take, budget approvals, and all of that kind of stuff. So are you two, like, I know the Fractally thing is new, but are you able to explain, what requirements is the community trying to solve with the Fractally developments? Is that a clear enough question?
When you say the community trying to solve, do you mean Dan, or what are the community trying to understand about it?
The development community, the developers who are working on Fractally. How many people is it? Are they just defining the scope of what it would be, or are they actually changing code at the moment that would become part of the new platform?
Well, yeah. So it's difficult. I haven't read it, so I still have to. After this weekend, I'll know a lot more. But it's basically, it is definitely part of what this becomes is more than just an app built on top of EOS. Like right now, Eden, for example, the current Eden is just an application, a DApp, whatever, has its own code, its own smart contract, and it is running on the EOS blockchain like any permissionless DApp can. So there's no integration to the actual how EOS as a blockchain is run in terms of governance or anything. It's been funded by some inflation. Well, technically it was RAM and name fees that the block producers gave to the ENF, which then gave to Eden. So that's the only really true relationship there. Fractally does more. It's intending to do more than that. So the developers are also changing the way, or suggesting they'll have to create code that then changes the way delegated proof of stake is actually functioning. So they're the suggestion, very high level, is that 10 of the 21 block producers will be selected through delegated proof of stake, weighted voting, just like it is now. Mm-hmm. And 11 of the total 21 will be appointed by Fractally. That requires some major code change to the core protocol level to integrate that. So this is more than just an app. But then again, so that's one side of it. The other piece is, so if you forget that and say, no, we won't change how that works. Fractally can still be Fractally and not change how block producers are picked. It could become closer to what an Eden is, and then in which case it would just be an app that can run. The only difference there is that the request, and this is what's a lot of the concern with the community, is that 2% more inflation is added. So that takes us from 3% network inflation up to 5%. And that 2% is directed towards Fractally. So then it becomes just an app, DApp, whatever, that's running on EOS, and it doesn't necessarily have to change anything to do with the core underlying EOSIO DPoS software.
Got you. So can we think through the benefits of like, why are they doing that that will make things more attractive to developers, to founders, and to investors? You mentioned earlier, or in the back of my mind, it was with this different distinction between the business side of a company and the IT side. At the end of the day, what I'm here for is helping founders to be able to select what they can build on for their app, for their DApp, and for investors to help them understand the value and the benefit of the features that are becoming available. So when you mention that Fractally can choose 10 block producers out of the 21, or what value can we suggest to investors or founders that actually delivers for them building businesses? Again, the whole point of blockchains and smart contracts to me is not to produce earnings for those running nodes. It's like an internal kind of situation.
Yeah.
But if we can think that what we want to really do is have a platform where we're building commercially viable, scalable businesses on top of the smart contract platform, what difference does it make if Fractally can select 10 block producers versus the current system? What are the benefits?
So one of the benefits would be, so currently this just gets into a whole rabbit hole of, is there currently even an issue on EOS at all with the way the block producers are currently selected? So so it's a whole rabbit hole. So basically one of the problems to those who think it is, to me, I think it's a problem to me, is that EOS is set up where stake-weighted voting allows for whales to capture the chain, which is fine. I mean, the idea is that whales who have the most stake should have the most, they have the most skin in the game, and then therefore they should pick block producers that will deliver the best technical performance, because that's delivers them the best optimal result for their investment, which is their EOS tokens. What's happened on EOS that is a bit of a problem, there's a few things. One of them is that exchanges are voting on behalf of customer tokens. So the majority of the top 21 are exchanges. And it's not because they own all those tokens. It's because the customers have chosen the exchanges to custody for them their tokens. And the exchanges are then taking those tokens and voting. It's in the terms and conditions. So yeah, they've agreed to this. They didn't opt in, however. They just click the checkbox that you agree to terms and conditions. So it's kind of a lousy excuse to say that all the users have agreed to this. But anyway, some say that. And the exchanges are then voting themselves into power. They're also trading those votes with their exchange buddies. So they kind of, as a group, have sort of worked out this little quid pro quo. And all those who are participating, they're not all exchanges, but there's other who are also participating in this. They then move themselves into the top positions of paid position. The money they withdraw from the network in terms of the 1% inflation that goes towards block producers, the ones who take the most, who are the top 21, they then use those to kind of pay for the votes they're trading with each other. So they sort of take that 1% and just cycle it around their group. And that's fine in one respect. The other downside is that EOS has very little restrictions on what it takes to, quote unquote, be a block producer. So the standby block producers don't produce blocks. So therefore, they don't have to have any infrastructure at all. All they need to have is an EOS account that they register as a block producer, and then now they can receive votes to move into standby positions, which are also paid. Those are called, when an exchange like Binance has done this, they'll take their stake, which is huge. They'll vote for a sock puppet EOS account that has no infrastructure at all. The website from this BP actually resolves to Binance's website itself. So it's an obvious sock puppet. And but there's no infrastructure. So all it does is just collect part of that standby pay just for themselves to help pay their token, because they also offer staking rewards for those token holders on their exchange who do this. So the money goes to some token holders in that respect, but it doesn't give back to the network. It's very vampiric. It just sucks inflation out. Mm-hmm. So as an investor or a founder, it may not care. Like, if we just want blocks to be made, hey, EOS makes blocks. It's fine. But in terms of like, is there, over the past 4 years now, 3.5, 4 years, there's been a ton of technical deficiencies in terms of how accounts are created. And like, everyone sort of thought that these BPs would be taking their pay and putting it towards improving the network, improving the blockchain, making improvements to how accounts are created in free accounts and how resources are managed, making it so that it's easier for founders to deploy their project on EOS and have just a nice user onboarding experience. That's never happened because the block producers didn't care. They were just happy to collect their inflation and call it a day. So there was this kind of misalignment in incentives. Some now say the ENF's job is they're going to do that for us. So block producers are just going to produce blocks, no problem. And now the ENF is going to be this centralized authority that is arguably understaffed, in my opinion. Like, they're not scaling to try to tackle this challenge. And they're the ones who are going to fix user onboarding. And that's what all these blue papers are for. They're now coming up with this laundry list of things that need to be done. The problem is it's a day late and a dollar short. ENF started in August. They've got 3 employees since August. That's pretty slow ramp rate in terms of building up a team, in my opinion. And in that time, they've given out some grants to a bunch of people. They funded Pomelo, and they've funded these blue papers, sorry. But that's nothing's actually happened. Like so how long is it going to take to actually see things happen? It might take another 6 months to a year just to have a few of those things get fixed. Like the world of blockchain, these things you need to scale. So you have like a dozen teams working synchronously or asynchronously to get a lot done. And I don't see that happening. So long-winded answer, I'm sorry. But what Fractally can allow is that now these 11 appointed BPs are selected by community members like Eden members who are humans, who care about the blockchain, who are selected not just because they're whales, they're selected because of their integrity and their trust and whatever, and their values. And they get to pick BPs who then collect this reward to do things that they think are going to be much more useful. So it allows the network to have more teams working concurrently to deliver that are selected by means other than just stake-weighted voting. So that might be an advantage to a founder.
Got it. That's fantastic. That was clear. Waxer.
Sorry. It doesn't revolve around Fractally. It could be implemented with the current Eden model.
It's about humans subjectively picking block producers. I mean, that's ultimately where we're adding another layer to the Pareto distribution and the capture by Pareto. 80% of the whales have 20% of the whales have 80% of the ability to vote, essentially, and select these BPs. You're throwing another layer into there where now EOS cannot be captured entirely by Pareto. And that makes sense to me. Like, I think there's a lot of value in that. The hard part is, of course, you need, in order to allow that change to take place, those who currently are in power need to like accept this change. Like they're gonna say, okay, yeah, I like this. Bring this in. I know I'm gonna lose a bunch of money now. I'm not gonna be top 21. Like, so how are you gonna convince the status quo to ever accept this? Is the problem that I do not see how that's going to be answered at all yet. I've asked this a few times to different people, and people who are like really supportive of this, they don't really have a good answer to that. That the BPs would just, oh yeah, go ahead, take my spot. I don't need this money. I've worked so hard to get here and to work at this cabal and this capture that we've got going on. But you know what? I like your idea. I'm willing to just let it go. Like, it's not going to happen. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Did you manage to have or did you talk about anything similar in your chief delegate meeting yesterday or the day before?
It was yesterday night. So it was a good call. I had to leave, and Dan came on. So the call lasted 2 hours or something. I had to leave partway through, unfortunately, and then Dan came and he gave. So I have to listen to the recording now because we went over it. John Williamson, who's chief delegate, Violet Garden, now on the Fractally team, he was providing a lot of sort of clarity around how the balancer pool works and how Bancor liquidity pools work and how the inflation would come in and what that would actually do. And it's not just inflation coming into this Fractally system and immediately going into the hands of the token holders to provide downward pressure. It's not how it would work. So there's some clarity that he gave there. I brought up the idea that if Fractally is going to pick block producers, if that's the end game, then maybe we ease into that with, say, how about Eden and the current Eden? Why not let it pick a block producer or three? Yeah. Because it seems to me Eden's the closest thing to a Fractally. We have this group of 400 people in Eden now. We could make the next election strictly about the purpose of that election isn't just to pick people to receive funding. It's like, okay, we're going to move to Fractally. We're going to agree to that. And now let's let this election pick some people to try this appointment part. And like, let's, baby step into that and see how it works. I don't know. The chief delegates were not super on board with the idea, but I think they're still open to being convinced. I don't know. I'm optimistic.
It would make EOS more of a true DAO network if we just started implementing the capability of, Fractally or Eden properly. So hopefully that'll happen.
So does Fractally relate at all to other EOSIO chains, or is it only EOS specific?
Interesting. The white paper does not mention EOS once. So 46 pages, I think, it not mentions EOS. So it could be deployed. The intention, as what I understand, is basically this could apply to any blockchain. It doesn't need to be EOS at all. There's a separate little FAQ that's on the website that's for EOS community, and it speaks to how this could be deployed on EOS. But it seems to me, and this is the other sort of messaging faux pas, I would say, is it kind of like it allows the opportunity for EOS community to feel kind of alienated, and a lot of the way it was perceived is this like ultimatum. It's like either you take this or we're going somewhere else type of approach. Like it felt that way to a lot of people. It's this sort of, it's all or nothing. There was no timeline of how this could be phased in, and how in terms of like socializing this idea, that was also a bit of a dropped ball in terms of how this could be messaged and communicated better to the community, who has a lot of past frustration and concerns of Dan being a scammer and walking away with all the money, and now he wants more inflation, and didn't we give enough money already? Like you hear that a lot in the chat. And I get it's the vocal minority, so it's not to say that necessarily like the pissed off people are often the loudest, and they're often not, but they are perceived as the majority. So it's worth pointing that out.
Yeah,
good point on that. So I've been juggling with an idea that I think is relevant here, or at least in terms of investment opportunities. So if we look at other chains, the most popular level 1 layer 1 solutions at this time, things like, and these are words that within our community, EOSIO community, maybe these names make people cringe, but the likes of Solana and Avalanche, and these are market caps of something like $300 billion. And the question is, how good are those platforms really? Do they deserve to be $300 billion market cap platforms? I spoke with, again, Chris,
300 billion.
Do you want to pull that up on? I thought I'm going off my memory from the past days of.
No, it's less. Solana is number 8.
Oh, it's 30 billion.
That's better. Yeah. There you go.
30 billion, and then EOS is 3 billion. If I remember rightly.
It used to be. It's not anymore. What is it? It is, no, it's like, I'm looking at Canadian 2.6, so call it 2.1 ish.
2 billion.
Yeah, 2 billion.
So you've got a big jump from say 2-ish billion, which might bump up to 3 billion in a better market, and then you got the likes of Solana and Avalanche at 30. But the likes of Solana and Avalanche, they have got a lot of problems. They've got a lot of timeouts and even hacks. And interestingly, an investor said that, well, they can kind of get too big to fail. And I think that's a really interesting attitude perspective, because there's so much money in this in the system, and if there's not something else that is competitive to it, then the shape and size of a market ends up remaining as it is long term. And just for the fact that Solana, Avalanche, etc., have very big investments from large VC funds, I think there is a legitimate opportunity to flip what they have to what the EOSIO community has, right? But that requires certain things in the EOSIO community, which is not just the EOS blockchain. It's like at least 8, I think, that I have sight of, from Proton and Wax and Telos, etc. Wax, interestingly enough, has shown us a diagram, a chart that shows you can combine all of the transactions on all of the other blockchains together, and that's approximately the equivalent of the transactions currently happening on the Wax blockchain. So from that investor perspective, I don't understand the technicalities, but I can see massive opportunity if the various chains within our community can present the various requirements to build commercially viable apps. And that's what I don't like about thinking of the success of networks as being their token price or even their market cap, because at the end of the day, it's like ephemeral. it's a short-term perception, but until you have successful utility, transactions that are feeding into real commercial businesses, then I think the chains are weak. They're targets for disruption for the platforms that can introduce the right. And then that's the question: is the combination of infrastructure, transaction times and that kind of stuff, tooling to allow developers to actually build efficiently and effectively on top of the chains. The tokenomics has to be good. And then the governance systems. And that's my little list of 4 points that I had here. Keen to hear comments from you guys. But my point really is that even though Solana and Avalanche are 10x the size of EOS, I think they're prime for disruption. And that money, that value can flow into the chains like Wax, like Telos, like Ultra, that are demonstrating commercial viability. And that's always my focus when I'm reviewing pitches, when I'm speaking with the chains and trying to understand, what's possible here, what's viable, is can we have commercially successful apps? What kind of things do they look like, and what kind of projects would be good to involve? And then you only need a few good projects on a chain, and it starts to get a snowball effect. And I kind of think that's what's happening with Telos at the moment. Comments from you guys?
Yeah, it's that idea of the users drive the value, and so this idea, like we've heard that where it's the number of users kind of predict the valuation of a chain, and I don't know if that's like, I feel like that's kind of not the way it's going to play out. Like, I know that's a valuation metric, but does that really matter? And how are unique users even identified? A lot of sock puppets, a lot of they're not Sybil protected. And Solana's gone down. Like, the technical prowess of Solana has not been good so far. Apparently, a lot of their metrics in terms of actual transactions are not true transactions. They're sort of like part of their consensus mechanism gets counted as actual transactions, but it's not. It's just part of the voting on chain. I need to do more research on Solana to better understand exactly how its consensus mechanism works. I've learned a bit about Cosmos, which is the Tendermint proof of stake system, which Terra Luna runs on. And I know it is 6-second transactions. So in terms of from a founder's point of view, when you want to create an application that is having actions that occur on chain, and you need to wait that 6-second latency, that is not a real world type of, when I click on a post, on a social media post, I don't want to wait 6 seconds for the heart to turn red or the thumb to go blue, right? Which you would have to on one of those type of slower chains. So I think it's the idea that Solana is just going to have this first mover advantage and they're going to win is it's too premature. I think it's far too early to make those types of declared victories, because it's gone down for 24 hours at a time. How can that be the sign of the winning chain when it hasn't even worked out its technical difficulties to scale? And the other thing that's really cool about what EOSIO can do, is starting to do, is this IBC piece, where we're now going to see this technology come out from the UX team that is going to allow this horizontal scaling. So you can now have these other blockchains that all intercommunicate. So parts of a smart contract can run on other chains and therefore scale horizontally. And you can get to millions of transactions per second, but not on a single chain. It's on a single network of chains. So I still think it's way too early for those. And it's people pumping their own bags, right? The people who say that Solana's already won are the people who own a whole bunch of Solana. Let's call it what it is. It's not like the EOS people are being like, oh man, Solana's won it. They got it. I mean, I'm still in EOS, but Solana, I think they've won the game. It's like, no, they just currently are the fashionable chain that was propped up by a lot of VC money. So, yeah.
I think it's important to have the underlying tech and then have projects build upon that with real life use case, like you said. I think the incubator program's been quite good for identifying some really interesting projects. I've got Telos up on the screen at the moment as a talking point, but we'll jump back to that. So we're almost coming to the end of the incubator wave 1 now. So that'll be our 8th week next Tuesday. We started incubator wave 2, which is every Monday, which is on its 3rd session next week. So how do you think that's been going, Gabriel in particular? And do you think there's some projects there with some opportunities to explore the real use case of the EOSIO network?
Yeah, so I got, like, obviously I got a tremendous amount that I could say about the program and the projects. I kind of half want to bear in mind the possible audience that we got for the show, and try and give some like value and direction. And a comment, just a general industry comment. So I was there in the crypto industry working professionally 2017 as the Ethereum ICO craze happened. And we see a lot of, in that time, we saw a lot of projects take off and raise millions of dollars with nothing but a white paper, and it became an industry joke eventually once people started to emotionally distance themselves from the money that they'd potentially lost, myself included. I invested in a bunch of ICOs, and some of them failed miserably and disappeared, and all sorts of stories, and some of them were successful. And so I still, again, it's that commercial viability. I've tweeted recently that a token sale is not a business model. And so some of the projects that are coming into the incubator program, they're kind of in the middle of understanding that it's not just about having a cool idea. And I think there's a legacy problem with, in terms of grants and free money and foundations that will just kind of almost willy-nilly give away a bunch of money to something because it's part of the community. As a VC fund, Helios needs to approach things from a very hard-nosed business perspective of, again, I'll say it, commercial viability. And I think this is where the blockchains in general, EOSIO networks and others, can become dominant market players. Ethereum had the first mover advantage and lost it because Ethereum 2.0 is always promised like, oh, it's coming later, and the network doesn't work because of the gas fees. So there's still, the market is completely open, and so the projects coming into the incubator program need to take their clever technological idea and turn it into a viable business model. And there's a tremendous amount of work that has to go into that. So some of them will bring a white paper, some of them will bring some level of a pitch deck, and then they start to realize, as we take them through the program, that they need to go and understand their market better. They need to understand the customer, the market size, the pricing model, whether that include traditional kind of pricing strategies of subscription payments or one-time payments or whatever, and then how do they mix that in with Web3 requirements, wallets, tokenomics. There's just, you realize that it's like the iceberg analogy, what you see at the surface level. And this is the problem with crypto investors. They'll see a couple of YouTube influencers say good things about an upcoming IDO or an existent project, and people will go and buy the token just on the basis of that. You don't know that the YouTube influencer hasn't just received $30,000. And I happen to know that that is a realistic price that some of these YouTube influencers pay, because I've had their price lists, for them to do a positive review on a project. And so it's very difficult for retail investors or the average crypto investors to judge a project. And it's also difficult for founders to know, how do I best present my business model or my piece of technology or my DApp idea to investors in a in a more sophisticated way, in a more realistic way, that will actually attract VC opportunity. And again, I see that as a massive opportunity for the space, for all of the EOSIO chains. The better that we can do of a job of developing the business models behind the investment pitch, the faster and the stronger we can grow commercial viability throughout the networks. And that's what I believe would then lift the market cap of the chains and make the tokens themselves more successful, is by having successful businesses operating on the chains. And I think we are doing. I think we are starting to do. We're moving in that direction with the incubator program, and it's a lot of fun. The goodwill and the support, like the collaboration between the different projects that are in the incubator program, is fantastic. The feedback's good. I enjoy the calls. The group seems to enjoy the calls.
100%. Yeah, it's funny, eh? It's like fundamental. The idea that a crypto influencer can just get paid. It's pay to play. That's frustrating to hear in a way. That's almost like the idea that I like this one guy. His name's Gerald Salenti. He gets on these crazy rants. He's a free market guy and libertarian. And he says he calls the mainstream media prostitutes, because they get paid to put out, basically, which is exactly what these crypto influencers are doing. They're getting paid to put out. So they don't believe what they're saying. They're just saying what they're told to say because they get paid for it. Which is, so where's the integrity, right? Like that's but it goes back to, who cares what these people say? Fundamentally, businesses need to get built that drive value. And it's the idea that I got into EOS because it seemed like the token had utility. It wasn't just this thing. Like Bitcoin has utility because it's a first mover advantage in terms of digital scarcity, and it's emulating gold. And we can all recognize the store value property of scarcity. I had a real estate agent, come to my house yesterday, and she was asking what I did, and I'm like involved in crypto. And she's like, and she didn't understand it. Really sweet, really nice girl. And I'm like, can you just like explain to me what this is? And I sort of just said, just think it's the invention of digital scarcity. And I'm like, you're in real estate. Scarcity is valuable, right? Property, the land itself, you can't create more identical plots of land. Like it's just scarce. That intrinsically is worth something. And that, she's like, oh, okay. And it's just, and I was like, you're young enough to get how software, you pay for it. Yeah, you can't touch it, but it's valuable. So now just think scarce software. And so she got it. And EOS made sense because it was the one guy, the Awakenment, Kyle, who is now he's very much not an EOS guy anymore, but he hangs around in the chats. And he had this analogy that EOS was like digital real estate, because when you owned the EOS token, you owned a piece of bandwidth of the network. So that if a bunch of applications in real world businesses that drive value for themselves get built on EOS and want to leverage a highly performant half-a-second block, high throughput blockchain, then they can build on EOS, and they're going to need to use the network resources to have their customers do transactions. And so if you own some tokens, you can then lend that little portion of the water pipe, and you own a little areas of the hose of data flow. You own your little slice of it. You can sell that to someone else to use. To me, that was a very sensible use case and justification for value. It's why I sold some Bitcoin for EOS, because it made sense. It had utility. And when I look at a lot of projects and a lot of tokens, the first question, I guess I'm old school, the first question I ask myself is, what does it do? Like, why do I want to own this token? What is the value proposition? And if it's just price go up, and so you're going to fill your bags and make money, that's like, I want nothing to do with that. It's a Ponzi scheme. And it's like, I'm here for the value. And in 10 years from now, I hope that sensibility enters this market, and all of those price go up tokens go down. And not because I want people to lose money, because I want this thing to become a rational marketplace where value creators and businesses that want to actually create value do so on a chain. And we're not there yet. That's why the idea that Solana is going to win, because they're already near the top. It's like, no way, man, this thing is still way too hype cycle. There's so much rational thoughts that are not taking place in terms of price discovery that eventually probably will happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, just quickly before Waxer, Speaking to the chains like Ultra and again Wax, some conversation with Telos as well. What they've got coming down the pike is very exciting. I'm not sure what we can share publicly yet. We're going to have to get approvals and stuff, but talking about marketplaces and all sorts of different things, even as soon as this summer, new professional service divisions from some of these chains. It really is exciting to have an insider look at what's going on and to see the drive, the move towards more of that rational business focused attitude and perspective. So we see that the smart contract platforms, which are essentially open source, right?
Yep.
But then how they are then starting to tie in with private IP commercial opportunities that are scalable. They have to be scalable. That was one of the problems with Avalanche or Solana. I can't remember the exact story. But one successful DApp that started to bring in a lot of users, the whole chain grounds to a halt.
Yep.
So that infrastructure stuff needs to be solved, but then the only next opportunity for those communities is to find out how to support the development of private profit-driven scalable businesses. And it's exciting to see that start to come together in the EOSIO chains.
It's exactly that. And I think a lot of you talk to people in EOSIO who are still here. It's like we're beaten dogs, those who have stuck around. Like this has not been a pleasant journey. There's no way. There's very few people who would look at this whole EOSIO thing and be like, fuck, it's been amazing. This has been the best time ever, because we've been crushed market cap. Most people are totally at a loss. Very few people have made out of this thing in a financial win. But you talk to them and they're like, the tech, we're here for the tech. And it's true. It's because the tech of EOSIO is still superior. I mean, it still does things that the other chains can't do. And that, for a business that wants to build an application, that at some point in time is going to become an important decision that you're going to need to make. As much as you want to leave EOS to go to Solana because they're offering you money to build on Solana, okay, great. But at some point that's going to backfire, because you're not going to be able to actually scale your business unless you totally change how it works and its reliance on a blockchain. Well, then shit, why even bother the blockchain? Just do a central server. Like, so yeah. At some point in time, these projects, and like you mentioned, Ultra, they're getting great price movement lately. Telos as well, because they're really trying to hone in on a particular use case. Wax, right? EOS still needs to find its use case. This is the biggest challenge that, right? Why is EOS? What is it trying to be? What is it trying to do? Why does a founder want to build on EOS? The only advantage EOS has, as far as I can tell, is market cap and liquidity. So if your project or your business doesn't necessarily require those aspects, then you may not be looking at EOS. Like if you're building the game, you're going to be looking at Ultra more than likely, because they have support. That's their focus. They're building on in-game mechanics and a marketplace and all that. Like, and they are up and coming, and they're going to real world use case actually prove themselves and prove what EOSIO can do. Yeah, it's exciting to be in EOS for those reasons, EOSIO, because at least we're starting to see stuff move. It's just been a hard game. it's a long haul to get there, but it's happening. This is going to be a big year, I think, for a few EOSIO chains. Hopefully EOS will do its thing too. But
as a foundation board member for Telos, Chris, what would you say? Because I think kind of more a generalist chain, it seems. They don't really have an Ultras gaming. What would you say Telos's primary use cases, or is it more of a case of the projects themselves that are developing, like the ones from Good Block and so on, they're providing the real world use case?
Telos, yeah, that was one of the first questions I asked when I became more involved in Telos, and Raison d'etre was about being a base layer 1 protocol for Web3. So pretty broad still, right? That's a pretty broad statement, but I think they're kind of going after this, not focused on one thing, just generally speaking, they want to be a Web3 destination. And so they will have games, they will have NFTs, they will have DeFi, and they've got the first EVM. So they're kind of doing well in terms of bringing in this developer community, because it's, as you mentioned earlier, Gav, about the importance of developers. Solidity has the Solidity devs for Ethereum. They're the majority of the developers in our space in blockchain. So when a blockchain like Telos, which is running on EOSIO, which is using C++ as its native code, if you can now take your Solidity developer skills and build an application on a C++ platform, then that gives, that brings in a lot more developers. And then they can also take advantage of the fact that EOSIO on Telos has these half-a-second blocks. You don't have that on Ethereum. Very, very low transaction fees. You definitely do not have that on Ethereum. So it's going to work out to their advantage. And, EOS is pushing, they want to have EVM now, Ethereum Virtual Machine. So they're working on that. But so far, Telos is got the first mover advantage on that piece. They've got a hackathon right now that's ongoing. They're doing another hackathon that's going to be far bigger. That's going to wrap up and resolve at the end of June in Consensus in Austin, Texas. So I see, like, when I compare EOS and Telos, and I'm not trying to cast shade, or it's not meant to be FUD. It's just an observation. Like, Telos has a far more organized business structure. They have a team, and they have a foundation voted by token holders. And there's like this greater sense of legitimacy, in my opinion, on the people the humans who are pushing that chain along. I just think it's a better structure. And EOS, I don't know. It doesn't give me that warm, fuzzy feeling on the inside when I think of the EOS leader. I mean, I don't agree with the method by which Eve has been selected. He's appointed by a bunch of VPs who are voting themselves into power with customer tokens. That's not it's not ideal. If I've suggested this, is that they should have an election, have a foundation that's not appointed by the BPs, bring in another method, another means by which you can select these people to have this sort of foundation role, and then let them. And I'm sure they'll pick Eve. Like, the thing is Eve doesn't change. It's the perception of how he got chosen, and is there a succession plan? Everything's quite clear on Telos how that works. There has been nothing about that so far on EOS, and there's been plenty of time. The ENF was started in August. So you can't say, oh, they just started. They didn't just start anymore. Like, there was plenty of opportunity for him to scale that team. And I'm not seeing the ENF being scaled. It's Eve, Zach, and Brandon Lovejoy. It's 3 people. That's not, I mean, Gav, you've seen lots of businesses built. You've been part of a lot of businesses. Does that seem an appropriate ramp rate for building up a team in crypto, and the rate of progress that we need to see?
No, I mean, in a scaling business, the limitation on how fast you can grow when the revenue is there, or the funding, is your rate of hiring, and that becomes the central focus for a business, is to find the right people to join the team. That becomes such a massive focus of the senior management team meetings. It's all about, what do we need? Who are we speaking to? What interviews are happening? Who are the best candidates? It's so central to the growth of something that is got market traction or is well funded. It has to be the driving force for a significant period of time. And for sure, if they've, like, again, I'm not super close to what's happening with the foundation, but if they've only got 3 people after, how many months is that? August, September, October, November, December, January, February. That's a lot of months. So it's obviously not their priority. So I wonder what is, or something.
Well, I think they did try employing some people. I don't know if they've came and gone, or because they've got such quite a broad infrastructure model, at least planned out. I know before Fractally release, I remember seeing potentially in a Telegram chat that Eves wasn't opposed necessarily to being replaced by an appointment process. So can you remember seeing something like that? Just perhaps a bad memory recall?
It's easy to say things. It's the actions that matter. So yeah, sure, Eve might have said he's happy to be replaced. I'm not seeing any tangible action that demonstrate that to be true. And so, I haven't seen, I might have heard it, but I I want to see action on that. Like, where's the proposal? Where's the actual, here's how we're going to do succession planning. Eve gets hit by a bus tomorrow, and I do not want to happen. I want Eve to have a long life, but whatever. Where's succession planning there? Like, what happens then? Where's the process? If the idea was that no one else has the connection to the Eastern block producers, because the majority of the token holders are now in the East, quote unquote, right? So, okay, great. Eve has these connections. He's got the Rolodex. Well, share it. I mean, if it's not like you don't live next to these people. They're like, you have their Telegram and their phone numbers or whatever. So build up your team and share that Rolodex. It's not, we're not, I mean, this isn't rocketry of science here. This is like basically common sense. You don't allow yourself to be a central point of failure in a funnel.
Well, that's what Dan was saying. That's what Dan was saying about Fractally.
Yeah, well, that's the whole. It's scalable. Like, yeah, you decentralize this knowledge base, but I mean, it's again one of the problems with EOS is these block producers are faceless entities. That's not how this chain was launched. It's migrated to that, but it was not launched that way. EOS was launched with a bunch of people on a Zoom call with their faces. Go, no go. And it was all like this community BPs who had a face. They had a website. They had a connection to the community. That has slowly eroded away, where now the vast majority of the BPs on EOS, you have no idea who they are other than a name. So for good or bad, to each their own. Personally, I think that we're still so nascent in blockchain that the community is still very, very important. Like these things are still predicated on a thriving community. It's more than just the businesses at this stage, because the businesses don't exist. So that's why I think Telos, again, is impressive to me, because they seem to have these block producers have faces and they interact with the community, and they have explicit rules that they try to enforce about not allowing exchanges to vote with customer tokens. Like, they've attacked this. Douglas Horn, he saw this coming. He wrote the Telos white paper and was the pioneer, the architect to help launch Telos, because he recognized the problems that were starting to occur 6 months after the launch of EOS. This was starting to become apparent. So it's been a long time to get us to where we are, but it's not like it was a surprise. And so, and one of the guys who was pushing the way it is now, vote by trade sell, was Eve. He was a big proponent of that. It's not surprising that he's been objectively a pretty good beneficiary of what this has turned into. So his block producer, EOS Nation, top BP, himself appointed to the ENF. So so, I mean, I don't know. It is what it is. I don't like it like this. Personally, I like the idea of the community of BPs getting together and talking and having a relationship and working together through problems. That to me was inspiring. But I'm like, I don't like these cold-blooded corporate calculations. I was laid off from a job because of a corporate move where you're dehumanized. I mean, is that what we want in blockchain? I mean, some people do. Trustless. We don't trust anybody. No trust anymore. I don't know about the society that I want to live in, that no one can trust each other anymore unless it's coded into a smart contract. That's really dehumanizing a lot of what this is in life. But I mean, to each their own. I don't know.
I think allowing the investors, the community, to decide what developments are going to be made on chain for the core infrastructure, who the BPs are. There's so much opportunity there, where it gives the investors so much more value to be involved with the chain, right? And it feels like that's what the idea was originally, and that's what Eden then came in to try and amplify or fix or utilize to a greater extent. But Eden so far hasn't really made any big changes or hasn't had the capability to impact these sort of chain dynamics. So, and then Fractally around, and there's I've read halfway through the white paper, maybe a bit more, and I haven't seen anything there about the capability it's going to have for the community to determine what happens with the network. So it just seems, I don't know, it feels like there's nothing. There's no direction at the moment to allow the community to actually make those changes. I think you brought it up the other night, Chris, on the call, on the fireside chat, and Eve said that there was no plan in place at the moment, so it's not being implemented. Is that right?
Yeah, Eve had sort of said, in one hand, he's open to the idea of BPs being selected by Fractally, but there was no real plan, so it's hard to really judge that yet, and it's missing a lot of information, so it's hard to really have You'd like to see it happen, but we need more information before we can really try to push that along. And so, okay. And then I suggested, well, how about we use Eden instead? Hey, here's a plan. Like, let's baby step into this. Let's use Eden. Like, so if we're just fractally, we can't move forward along that path yet because there's no tangible timeline, and we don't see how it actually is going to play out. All right, well, let's start it with Eden. Problem solved. Like, let's baby step just one BP. It doesn't even have to be all 11. Let's just start with Eden. It's a similar fractal process. Using that same consensus mechanism to select for trust in individuals. And he was actually much more opposed to that idea. So it was like one of those, I'm open to it because there's nothing that I can actually speak to necessarily because it's so loose and it's not definitive. And then it's like, well, here's something we can actually do starting next month or 2 months from now when the election is. And then he was far more against that. So yeah, I question the openness, in fact, to allowing, and this is where I go back to what I said earlier, where any of the BPs who are going to allow fractally to select 11 of 21 B of who they are basically willing to walk away from their position of power. I don't know a lot of for-profit entities that are willing to make those types of sacrifices for the betterment of the chain. There's a contradiction there. And I've called this many times where at some point these two ideas are going to come to a head and the cozy honeymoon relationship between Eve and Dan is probably going to end, and we're kind of going to see that play out, and it's already played out. This is far from over in terms of how this goes.
Yeah, hopefully the community can come together and find a solution, a happy middle ground, so progress can be made.
Yeah, I think in my mind that starts with having a publicly visible, I'll say roadmap, but at least a set of acceptance criteria. There's developers and product managers in the community. How about organizing a publicly visible list of backlog requirements, and then with acceptance criteria, and then turn that into what are the epics, the user stories at the epic level that define the scope of what needs to happen to make the best possible outcome for commercially viable applications and businesses to build on the EOS chain. Where is that visibility of a public roadmap? I don't know that it exists. I see a lot of conversations, but I don't see that kind of documentation level clarity, and that makes me wonder, well, why? Are people that disorganized, or are they wanting to not actually deliver that clarity of a roadmap?
I think it's an DNF roadmap.
Well, yeah, very high level. I think the right now the answer to someone would be to you that the blue papers, sorry, they have their own special name. The blue papers are what that roadmap will look like. However, they're not a roadmap. They're a bunch of papers that you'd have to read to then decipher and put into a roadmap. And there's multiple of them, and one's about APIs, and one's about wallets, and one's about core development, core protocol stuff, and one's about recovery. And so there's all these different audit plus, there's these blue papers, but there's no, okay, here's what it is. And fair enough, because they were just delivered. So someone's got to basically take all this information and then filter it into something that's tangible and have all these teams spin off to do work and try to work through them. But as a founder, a founder looking to deploy on a blockchain, there's nothing for you to look at that says, oh, okay, in 6 months, they'll have this, this, and this, and that's X, because I need user onboarding. What does that look like? How are the wallets? If Wax, it's cloud wallet, free Telos, free accounts. It's all there, and it's very clear what they're trying to do. EOS still isn't there yet. It's still a bit of you'd have to kind of be a clairvoyant or spend a week or 3 reading through all these blue papers to understand what might be coming, not even conclusively what is coming or the order of operations. And so, yeah, there's still, you're right, Gav. It's not instilling confidence yet, because it is missing these kind of key pieces that you're going to want to see as a founder.
The Telos roadmap's really clear. We covered that on the top 5 moments. I think that was a really good piece of work.
They've got a clear set of things they're going to try to get done. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of them's around ID, and they're going to do enhancements of Decide Voter, which is on-chain voting. That's done and it works, and it's what elected myself to the Talos Foundation. They've got a worker proposal system that works, and it's and they're going to try to make improvements there. And yeah, there's it's tangible. It makes sense. The EVM is going to be improved, like, you know. So
what are they doing with EVM?
I specifically, I don't know, but it's like EVM 2.0. So it's more of as a technical founder, it would be useful for them to see this. I don't know enough about exactly what it is, but at least it's something that you could read. If I'd have to go back and read what they said, but you know, it's something tangible at least.
Very good.
So we've kind of walked all over the place with this conversation. I think for the right audiences, I think it's very constructive, and at the end of the day, we're gunning for a similar thing of the success of viable, profit driven, you know, token price go up, surrounded by good quality businesses that are building on these chains. Very keen to see EOS progress. Cannot possibly try and speak for Brock Pierce, but I think it's safe to assume that he would love to see, as the founder of Helios, and so involved with the community, he would love to see EOS be able to sort out and move through these challenges, constraints, and develop a platform that founders can build on, investors can trust and see with more credibility, and compete with the other EOSIO chains that are showing good progress. Again, Telos, Wax, Ultra, Proton, Chintai, the others that slip my mind with the acronyms.
Yeah, I think you're right, man. Yep. Yeah, this has been a good conversation. We're basically at just over an hour, so we could probably call it. I don't think we didn't have any live viewers other than myself because I have it running next to it. Really, we're at 0. I'm watching twice. But I think, I don't know, we'll share this, do some Twitter sharing, share it in some Telegram, and then we'll do this every week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
9 a.m. Eastern is the time for now.
Probably change next week, but it's a little bit later in the day. But I'll publicize it on Twitter and give people a heads up to the next one. We've had a warm up.
And have some guests who can add more dimension and light and people that we can do a round table discussion with. I think that'll be very exciting, very interesting.
Yeah, I think we've got a few confirmed, so potentially a guest for next week.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, Trevor.
Have a good day, guys.
Bye.